Alright, so the title of this one is The Descension into Hades. And if you read any classical works, you're going to come into this same hero's journey where the hero essentially will descend into some underworld, some hellish figure type place where it's a part of the journey that they go through that they have to go into this dark, whatever it is, ascend out of it to defeat whatever enemy or whatever thing they have to get out of there. They have to go down into Hades and they have to come back. And this is seen in a lot of the classics, I guess you could say. And it's mostly popularized in kind of the Percy Jackson series because it's based off the classics, so like Homer, the Odyssey. And it's this hero's journey where they're set out on a destination, on a journey. They have to accomplish some task or collect some things to get to the end goal of the destination. But first they have to go through something very difficult. They have to go down to hell and they have to get out alive, basically. And I want to read a couple passages from different things that really involve this topic. And the first one is the Divine Comedy. And Dante descends into hell. It's his 3 poems of Inferno, Purgatorio, and Paradiso, which is hell basically, and Inferno, Purgatory, and then Paradise or heaven. And I'll just read you the first line of the poem and then one other famous line where he has to descend down into hell. And I find it. So here's the first line, Canto 1 of the poem Inferno by Dante. Midway upon the journey of our life, I found myself within a forest dark, for the straightforward pathway had been lost. So the poem starts out famously, midway upon the journey of our life, I found myself within a forest dark, for the straightforward pathway had been lost. He's in a dark place, lost, confused, and it kind of starts out with an unknown. And it's kind of like a horror movie vibe where he doesn't know where he is and it's not somewhere you want to be. He gets this guide that takes him through hell. And then this is the next famous line where he comes upon the gates of hell and there's an inscription written on it. And this is in Canto 3. He says, before me there were no created things, only etern, and I eternal last. All hope abandon, ye who enter in. These words in somber color I beheld, written upon the summit of a gate. So he comes into the gate of hell and it says, all hope abandon, ye who enter in. It's a place of hopelessness and also fire. And this picture of Hades and death, it's also like, not only throughout all of literature, but also in the Bible where it says man is appointed once unto death and then after this the judgment, that we all have an appointment with Hades, where we all have to face death. And that's really what the descension into Hades is. It's facing death. And let me read another one, which is based off of Homer's The Odyssey, which is the Aeneid. And one of the chapters, it's kind of the same story as the Roman version of the Odyssey, and it's Aeneas. I believe it's book 6. It's the kingdom of the dead. It's the same type thing where he has to go into the underworld. And let me just read you a portion of this. On they went, those dim travelers under the lonely night, through gloom in the empty halls of death's ghostly realm, like those who walk through woods by a grudging moon's deceptive light, when Jove has plunged the sky in dark and the black night drains all color from the world. There in the entryway, the gorge of hell itself, grief and the pangs of conscience make their beds, and fatal pale disease lives there, and bleak old age, dread and hunger, seductress to crime and grinding poverty, all terrible shapes to see, and death, and deadly struggle and sleep, twin brother of death, and twisted wicked joys and facing them at the threshold of war, rife with death, and the furies iron chambers, and mad raging strife, whose blood-stained headbands knot her snaky locks. And then one final passage that I want to read. So we have Dante, the Aeneid. The next one is the Bible. So there's two different points. There's multiple points in the Bible where it talks about Hades and the descension and death, but two main stories. Well, I'll just say one main story is Jonah, where he's running from God. He gets in a ship, goes in the ocean in the opposite direction to some faraway land, I think Tarshish or something like that. And God basically summons a storm. The people throw him overboard because they're like, he's cursed. He's causing this. He's gonna cause our whole whole boat to ship. They throw him overboard. He gets swallowed up by a whale, and he's in the belly of a whale for 3 days and 3 nights. The whale eats him. It doesn't like digest him, but it swallows him up, descends down to the deep, the darkness. It's 3 days and 3 nights. And there's a verse talking about the ascension and descension of Jonah for 3 days and 3 nights. There's one verse in Matthew 12:40 where it says, "For as Jonah was there 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth." And then Ephesians 4:9-10, which is the one I was going to read, was, "He ascended," what does it mean? But also that he also first descended into the lower parts of the earth. He who descended is also the one who ascended far above all the heavens, that he might fulfill all things. So I guess there's this imagery of descension, and you're going down into death, and ascension, where you're coming up into life. And it's the same thing with Jonah. It's the same thing with Odysseus in the Odyssey when he goes into the underworld, or Aeneas in the Aeneid when he goes into the kingdom of darkness, where there's just death and suffering, hopelessness, fire down there, or in the Inferno in Dante, where it's this hopeless state. They have to go through this horribleness. They have to go down into it, but they come out of something to get something better out of it. And if you look at the School of Athens painting by Raphael, you'll see Plato pointing upwards and Aristotle pointing downwards. And I guess people have kind of interpreted that as Plato's pointing up towards the heavens, towards the spiritual or immaterial things or forms, and Plato's pointing downwards towards the earth or the material world, and kind of the seen empirical things, and Plato is towards the unseen, immaterial, somewhat spiritual things. So the whole idea of ascending and descending. If you descend down, there's also a relationship of light and darkness about when they go down into Hades, it's this dark place, the kingdom of darkness, the underworld. And then when you go up, it's where there's like a lot of imagery of light and paradise and heaven and brightness. And there's a correlation between that, between light and darkness. It's also in Plato's cave, allegory of the cave in Plato's Republic. Socrates is talking about this allegory where there's a cave of darkness, and they're all bound up and chained. All they've ever known their whole life is these images on a wall back of the cave from the fire that's made out of like figures that create these shadows. They think that's real. Someone escapes the cave, they see the light, they see the truth, and they see the real world, and they come back into the cave to tell other people who are in darkness, who are in bondage, to come to the truth, to come to the light. And it's also this ascension thing, because when you descend into the cave, it's a place of darkness. When you ascend, you elevate, you go higher into a place of light and truth. And there's a correlation between that too. But I guess I was thinking about how the verse in the Bible that says it's appointed unto man once to die, and after this the judgment. It's like we all have to have an appointment with death, an appointment with Hades. everyone's going to come face death at one point. And as well as there's another point in the Bible about you can't really become fully alive until you die first. So I think there's a verse about the seed that says in order for it to come alive, it must die first. I wrote it down somewhere, but I can't find it right now. Anyways, also in all these stories, Jonah, Dante's pilgrimage, the Aeneid with Aeneas, the Odyssey with Odysseus, they're taking a journey. It's the hero's journey. They start at one point, they travel through all these different places, experiences. Dante, it's a tour guide of hell and heaven, everything in between. And it's this pilgrimage where they're starting in one place, but they have a destination to reach another place. And I guess it just kind of speaks to human nature, how we've always had these hero's journeys in every story, every piece of literature, art, anything like that, where it's the same topic over and over again. And it's kind of human nature. It's what we wanted to happen. It's kind of like what we desire. It's just what makes a good story. It's a story of redemption. It's a story of like the underdog. It's a story of a journey that you have to take where you get somewhere in the end. Another book I recommend is Man's Search for Meaning, where he was a concentration camp survivor, and he's talking about finding meaning in that. And it's a kind of hero's journey as well about, instead of the descension into Hades, I mean, it was being placed in a concentration camp where just kind of in the middle of hell. Another thing I thought about was just the relationship of darkness and fire. It seems to be related with this hellish type experience, the underworld, Hades, hell, hopelessness, suffering, torment. I mean, the scriptures, a lot of literature, art, everything kind of describes it as a place of darkness and also heat and fire and an inferno. And sometimes it's kind of like you think it's a contradiction, because how can be a place of darkness and just black, but also fire and heat, and that's light? So I remember one time I was put on this travel job and I was in the middle of nowhere, and I looked out at night and it was pitch black, but there was like a nuclear plant or some type of factory or something that was just exploding these flames of, I think it was like nuclear power or something. I don't know what it was exactly, but there was so much fire and it was just so hellish looking. I looked outside, I was like, this is what hell is. I mean, now I understand the relationship of darkness and fire at the same time, because it was pitch black, but also it was just the amount of fire coming out of these plants was just scary looking. It was just like, it was not a good feeling, to be honest. I guess the fire is also just represents torment and represents thirst and lack of comfort and peace and stability, and it's chaos and it's just tormenting. I mean, that's what Hades, death is. It's synonymous with death. I mean, when they're going down in the Hades, I said this earlier, but you're facing death itself. You're facing the hardest thing you can face, death. So in all these examples, Odysseus, Aeneas, Dante, Jonah, even Jesus, everyone's got to descend into death. But the redemption is when they resurrect or ascend out of Hades, out of death. I mean, I think in the Percy Jackson series, he has to go down into Hades, and then he gets out. Everyone gets out. And that's the best part, is to get out of hell. I mean, when Dante leaves hell and goes to paradise, that's the end, that's the climax, that's the good part of the story, is that he got a tour of what it's like, and he's like, run from this place. You don't want to end up here. I already talked about life and death and how life is in the ascension, not the descension. I mean, you think about elevation and depression. When something's elevated, it's brought up, it's uplifted, it has hope, it's brought to a higher degree. When something is depressed, it is brought down, descended, brought down to a lower degree, hopeless. It's a state of just degradation and being brought down low. And as far as the whole depression thing, the only solution for something that is depressed is to be elevated back up. If something's being depressed down, something else is being elevated. So people that get depressed, they're elevating the bad thing, causing their spirit to go down. But if they would elevate the good thing, it would cause their spirit to go up. It would elevate them. There's a thing called genuflection, and it's when you bow down to a king. And what you're doing is you're depressing yourself. You're bringing yourself low so you can bring them high, like ultimate respect and honor and authority. And whatever you're doing in your life that's elevating something and causing you to be depressed, you need to do the opposite and depress that and elevate the good things. So the Bible basically emphasizes that you need to depress the flesh and elevate the spirit. The flesh was born for death, and the spirit was born for life. So the bad things, the sin, the lower nature of you, your flesh, things that are just not good, bring those down in priority in your life, in your mind. Bring the good things up, elevate them. I mean, a lot of people that are depressed, they focus on one thing that just brings them down, and they're focusing on the wrong things. Sometimes it's easier said than done. I guess one final thing is, what was my final thing? I guess people that have never descended into Hades or gone through a major trial, they're not really transformed in the way that the people that have gone through the hero's journey, that have descended down and came out of it, what they turned out to be. And there's something lacking for the people that have not gone through something. It's like they just lack perspective and understanding, and they've never suffered, so they've never really changed or grown in a way. You kind of have to suffer in a way sometimes